Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited. I'm excited for all my guests, but I'm really excited today for my guest, Aimee Molleken. Aimee is my friend. We actually met on Jake Roberts' podcast, which I just had Jake on my show a couple days ago, actually. And we both have an interest in ancient history and, of course, Oak Island, genealogy, all kinds of really good topics from the ancient world. And so today we're actually going to be covering something I haven't done on a show yet, which I'm always really excited about because I like all topics. Everything's on the table for me. And we're going to be doing Rosicrucians and Freemasonry, which is a very important part of the development of, let's say, spiritual traditions, but also potentially some problematic areas in terms of secret societies. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but me and Aimee will talk about that, our perspectives on that. She's got some good, good firsthand perspectives on both of those groups as well, if she'd like to share that. So I'm going to go ahead and read Aimee's bio here, and we'll just jump right in. We're going to do like kind of a slideshow format today, but it's going to be really fun and informative. Okay, so I already mentioned that me and Aimee met on Jake's Ghost of Bacon podcast. You guys can, and actually Aimee was on Jake's show as well a few weeks or a couple months before me. I can't remember, Aimee.
A few months.
A few months before me. Okay, great. And
we're going to cover some of the slides in this one. It will be some slides in there.
Okay, awesome. And so Aimee did a show on genealogy, and it was really excellent. And I went back and watched it really closely, and I think there's more to come on that too, right, Aimee? In terms of exposing some more of that in the future, which is going to be great. Okay, so Aimee is a plumbing and mechanical designer and IT support specialist. She's also a minister with the Universal Life Church and an amateur genealogist. I'd already mentioned genealogy. Mm-hmm. She's got degrees in tech school, computer-aided drafting and design, which I believe is called CAD, correct?
Correct.
Okay. An associate's degree in network administration, also an associate's degree in cybersecurity, and a bachelor's degree in technology management. She's also got a master's degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. And Aimee's also got her own YouTube channel. It's really cool, guys. Check it out if you're interested. It's called Adventures in Pixie Land. I'll put the link below the description here of the video when I post the video, so you guys can check that out. Just click, make it easy click for you to get to that page. So welcome, Aimee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dave. Are you ready?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess we'll just jump right into the slideshow if you want to do that, Aimee, and we'll just go through your points.
Well, because it's gonna set a tone for the rest. What's in the slideshow in the beginning will be ready for us. So
okay,
when you're ready to authorize, you'll be able to see the screen.
Yep, there we go. I just started to use StreamYard, guys, and I have to be honest, it's really awesome. Jake Roberts was raving about it to me, and I actually did not think it was free, and that's why I hesitated on that, because I'm trying to use my funding elsewhere, in terms of what I'm supporting. But it's great. You can actually record like up to 20 hours for free per month, which is plenty for me. So I'm over the moon. It's very, very easy.
Cool. So,
all right, Aimee. So whenever you're ready.
Yep. The Merovingian bloodline and the influence on secret societies. So starting with the Merovingian bloodline. Now, what is the big deal with the Merovingian bloodline? Because people thought they died out and they didn't die out, right? History likes to record it, but history likes to record whatever is convenient for the people who are in charge of writing the history and not necessarily what actually happened. As we get to see if you go over to Jake's show with his topics of, Sir Francis Bacon and who his real parentage was. It would have been not beneficial to the state secrets for them to know that this is who Francis Bacon really was, right? And in the Merovingian timeline, as you go through this, they start out saying that they are descendants of this creature that you see over there, this bull sort of fish creature, which some, and this is before Christianity is the main religion in the world right now, okay? Now, in some cases, there are people who say that these are actually just all symbols of Christ, and they were always claiming to be descendants of the Christ bloodline, because that is eventually, once Christianity became the main religion, they started saying they were descendants of them. Now, what you will find in the Merovingian tombs is what you see in this little picture right over there is golden bees and symbols of the bull. Now, the bull is supposed to be a symbol of strength. It goes back to, same with the bees, like ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, in those ancient cultures, in their belief that bees were immortal. But somewhere in there, they started claiming that they were the descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, which is part of what brought that in the culture that you see, like in the movie culture that's going on right now, the pop culture world. What moved that forward even to today's timeline?
Now, Aimee,
started with them.
Okay, I just want to ask you a question. So, do we have a name for this beast?
There is. It is called a Claudo. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. A Claudo. It's
Okay.
Yeah. No,
I wonder if
it's a Quintar. It was Claudo's wife that supposedly got pregnant by this Quintar, and which, if you go through, they're not. I haven't done this, but people who are like mythical beast experts, where they're studying that symbology, they can find no other symbology of this beast anywhere else. It's unique.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Of course, what I immediately pick up on, since I do a lot with ages of astrology, I know you do some astrology as well, I think, right, Aimee? I think about the age of Taurus because it was roughly 4,000 to 2,000 BC. And during that time, you do in fact see a lot of cultures picking up the bull motif, bull worship all through. It was actually throughout the entire world, really. I know for a fact, Crete, of course, with like the Minotaur and kind of the Minoan civilization. You had ancient Egypt worshiping bulls. I mean, you even had them worshiping, a golden calf in the Bible, and then you go over to ancient India, and they've pretty much always worshipped the bull. So these things are specific to timelines as well,
Well, they were worshiping the golden calf in the Bible because they had just come out of Egypt, where they were required to worship the golden calf there. It was part of the absorption of the Egyptian, because they were enslaved there for so long.
Yep.
Right? And they didn't want to, upset their overseer kind of things. So not everybody who was ethnically Jewish that Moses took from Egypt was religiously Jewish, I suppose is the way to refer to it, because it's an ethnicity as well as a religion. It's a whole culture in and of itself.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can, even modern day, you have cultures that the people aren't, genetically part of that line or lineage, if you will, but they have adopted that because they move into their area or something, so I totally get that. Yep.
Yep. In this case, it's an absorption. Now, I'm not sure when the age of Taurus was for this particular thing, when this was in the tomb, but this was found in a tomb in 1655. Okay. So this was a thing would have been known during the Enlightenment age, been known during that, Rosicrucian blossoming, if you will, would have been discovered during that time period. This belief that the Merovingians were descendant of Jesus and Mary Magdalene is what created the divine right of kings. That's where it came into play in this particular time frame in history. It's just that it carried through and became the monarchy, became absolutionism in that way, where your king is your God authority. Because they weren't just in charge of a country, they were in charge of a religion. Let me say my cat wants to say, agrees with me. That's Rupert in the background. You guys say he agrees with me. They worship cats in Egypt. As far as he's concerned, they're cool peoples.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, of course, then again, for me, it's about Leo, which is the age of Leo, the sign of Leo, and all these things, which is really the center of the power spiritual traditions. It's the sun. I mean, the sun rules Leo, and the sun rules the heart. So that's the center of all the teachings right there, guys. Leo. That's where your cat comes from.
Leo is also the sign associated with the Archangel Michael, as he's the lion of God's army. But he's associated with the solar plexus. But that's yellow. Okay. So it's all following that color of yellow.
Yep.
Now, what you have up here that you're seeing is any place where you see the highlighted yellow color. And these are some slides. People, if you guys saw Jake's broadcast with me, you would have seen this. This is the Merovingian line, the line that they thought died out, which didn't die out at all. This is every place, because when they were recording this, they were only recording what the boys did. They forgot that the DNA was actually carried in the women, because they didn't think that like that. They didn't have that science at that time. And we learned that DNA, from what we even know today, it did not carry like we thought it carried. It's very specific. And it's almost rather random. There's no real way to tell without a thorough genetic test just how much of your mom's DNA versus your dad's DNA that you have in you. Just that you'll have both. They don't know what mix you get of what ethnicity is a different thing. But these slides I'm going to go through pretty quick, because what we're really doing is sort of tracing Bertha and Ethelbert, right? Because they are of the Merovingian line. They come, this Charbert, if we were to zoom in up over here, we have Clodido, and we're just chasing it through with what their kids are, right?
Okay, so, his name is Charbert.
Charbert the First. That's one of the children of the founder of the Merovingian line. Okay,
what year was that? What year was that roughly, Aimee?
Charbert is 517
AD, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the lady, what's her name?
That's a good question. Ingoberg is Charbert's wife, but Bertha it would be his daughter.
Okay.
And he was the king of Paris, and his daughter married the king of Kent, which is in England. So from there, we're following this line even further. Now, some of these ones weren't documented very well in that other one. So this one I constructed myself, but these are all their actual people. So then we're following their son, and then we're following the other children until we're getting down. And where we're really trying to go to here, you'll find in the next slide. It's really more down at the end that we even care, because we get down to the end. And what we got is that daughter of unknown name marrying Elmond of Kent, she's Ethelbert of Kent. And you can, if you go back to that previous slide, you'd be able to trace Ethelbert of Kent right back all the way up to Bertha, back up to Clodido. It's the whole Merovingian line. They're not recorded as Merovingians, but that doesn't mean they're not carrying the DNA.
Now, what happened between let's say Christ's resurrection in 571 AD? Where did those records go, Aimee? Or we don't have access to that?
Freaking idea. I don't think we have. The Vatican might have access to them.
Oh,
but
I'm sure.
There gets to be a certain point in history in which you have a hard time. The people just weren't writing anything down. You have to find, for those types of connections, you're really going back to like Pliny the Elder. And, you got to find verifiable sources and see if they talked about them. So it's going to depend upon if the known historians then had any interaction with these people, which they might have, they might not have. It depends. There's some of them you do find that they do. You can find stories in there from back in the BC era, depending. But it's really hard to trace lineages that way. We weren't good at keeping up. We weren't even really good with keeping up when we started tracing lineages of what the women were doing at all. If they didn't marry a man of influence, we didn't even bother. Nobody wrote it down. Nobody cared.
Well, what's interesting about that to me too is that a lot of the actual Native American tribes in the United States, which I'm sure you're aware of, Aimee, are matrilineal, and I've talked with quite a few of them, and I thought it was a Zuni tribe between New Mexico and Arizona, and there are probably several of them, but I think I saw something where it said that, I'm pretty sure it was Zuni. She was saying that the daughter essentially gets the house, and it's one of the daughter. I don't know if it's the eldest or the youngest. I think it might be the youngest. Can't quite remember. But it's interesting because I also know people who live in India who actually practice the same type of thing, where the daughter will inherit the house, and then if you're another daughter, then you have to figure out, another way to do that. But the amazing thing about the matrilineal line, I believe, carries the mitochondria, right, for the cells in the body. So that's like your dynamo for your body is coming from your mother, not from your father. So
well, and this is you see this carry over in other traditions as well. It's very hot and heavy in the Jewish culture, right? It is very male led as far as the religion and the culture goes. But as far as the passing on of DNA, you are only Jewish if your mother is Jewish.
okay.
If your father is Jewish and you have a Christian mother, you got to convert your children. You actually have to put them, you can't even just raise them in a church. There's an actual ceremony to convert them that you have to do, even though they have that DNA in them. And that has everything to do, I believe, to that knowledge of the mitochondrial DNA. And I know this seems like that's pretty advanced given how old the culture is, but you need to understand that the rest of us, we're running around here still following this Kabbalah thing going, what does this mean? And this culture is the one that created it. It's the Jewish culture that created the Kabbalah in the first place. So they know, alchemy they were mixing in with Egypt. They were mixing in with, Muslim countries, some of which were heavily into alchemy. All those things, it was all swirling around them all at the same time when they're writing down their doctrines and coming up with their original writings. So the mysticism, that's why it can carry over into so many different cultures. And they are much the same way.
A quick note about the Kabbalah too, Aimee, is I think I mentioned this to you, I can't remember. But when I first got involved with Oak Island, it was because I saw what was projected to be the Tree of Life, also called the Kabbalah, on Oak Island, overlaid on top of Nolan's Cross, if you guys know about that. If not, I highly would recommend watching the show. It's a good watch, Curse of Oak Island. And I didn't know a lot about it at the time. This was I want to say this was back in 2015. So I took it as an opportunity to actually research the Kabbalah. And I tried to make the measurements fit. I couldn't quite get it to work with what I was seeing on the island for measurements and everything. So I kind of put it off to the side for a while. It's recently kind of come back for me because I do believe that Oak Island has a very large component that's related to Jerusalem. And I would say, from my perspective, definitely Knights Templar. But also, it seems to be kind of all of the groups somehow knew about this location. I think you probably agree with that. Rosicrucians, Freemasons, very interesting story.
Well, there's a reason why they would all have that association. It's not that Oak Island has to have only been done by either the Masons or the Rosicrucians or the Knights Templar, right? Because whether or not any of those organizations have any cross reference, and minimally they're following the same kind of tenets of practice, whether that's the only cross connection there is or not, it doesn't matter. They're all following the same tenets of practice, but just hang on, we'll get there. Okay. There's a reason why there's an overlap. We're following the Merovingian line, right? Now we're here in Alfred the Great. We just went to Alfred the Great's parents in the slide before. We got ourselves to Alfred the Great. See, he's over here, right? Merovingian Alfred the Great. Now we start tracing Alfred the Great's line down into England, because we're over here in England, right? So here we are, over here with King David, and then Matilda of Scotland, who's married to Henry I, because it went from just English line to Scottish line. Right now we've got the more mixing in, so we got the whole house Plantagenet is of the Merovingian line then, right?
What does that term mean, Aimee? I've seen it
house
before.
Plantagenet is, so when we had the War of the Roses, it was the Yorks versus the Plantagenets. That Game of Thrones things they were doing, that was real history. It was theatricalized real history. The Lannisters are the Lancasters, the Starks are the Yorks. So he wasn't making up new stuff. He was going through, like, Tywin Lannister is Richard III in real life. Like, that's who that is. That's who that character represents.
All right, so these are essentially family lines.
These are family lines.
Okay.
These are family lines. There was giant wars. And the reason why there's all these wars in history is because all of these people from all these noble houses, regardless of what country they're in, they're all related to each other because they will only marry each other. So eventually, you just end up related to everybody. There's no fresh DNA left. So that's why the War of the Roses. I mean, if you're looking up over here, you're over here now, you're in Spain. And way back, we're talking about back in the like 1000 eras. We're talking about in the start of these Knight Templar eras, with the Merovingian bloodline streaming right through the Knights Templar era. And in here, you would actually see right here, marrying into this Merovingian bloodline. I don't know if this would let me zoom in any closer without breaking out of the slideshow. But this person's name is right here. It's John Hastings. As in the Hastings that is indeed listed as a Knights Templar, as in the Hastings that is indeed a foreman on Oak Island later. With
okay.
Okay. They all know about it because the legends are coming all from the same family. I don't care what branch of this giant organization of related to people that you're in. It's just different branches. It's like what Theo Fossey does right for you. Right. So here is the main focus here of where this starts to bleed in, where it starts affecting secret societies, this Merovingian line. It's Sir Francis Bacon, if you believe like I do, what Jake Roberts says is true. And Sir Francis Bacon is the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and the Dauphin of France. Now, I fully believe that the Dauphin of France, Francis II, he was indeed Merovingian. I just haven't chased that bloodline through France yet. I've only chased it through England and Scotland. There's more to do there because it takes me all over the globe. It's until I have a, hey, I think that's a line. Let me go tug it. I haven't gotten to it yet. I will.
You know what that reminds me?
Go ahead.
Sorry. You know what that reminds me of is Dauphin Island, Alabama.
Mm. Is it shaped like that?
Well, I actually don't know the shape, but it's just the name, the dolphin. It's like something. I don't know. Something about that is familiar to me somehow. And
well,
I know Jake's done a lot of that too.
For a reason, because the Dauphin is indeed the dolphin. The dolphin is the fish. It's another one of those. Hey, we're related to the Merovingians. Hey, we're related to Christ. Okay. Things just like the fleur de lis looks like a bumblebee because that bumblebee is immortal, is a symbol of immortality going back to the alchemy, to the ancients, and it's again about their line of kings, like basically never dying out kind of thing.
Okay, now how does Melusine fit into this?
That is an excellent question.
Because she's supposedly the ancestor of a lot of people, royal families. They claim her, I believe, in Europe, right?
Yes. I haven't done a lot of any real actually.
Okay.
Look up of Melusine. Just
what's interesting about it to me too is that they're not joking when they say this, guys. Like they actually mean that that's a relative. So when you think about the implications of that, they're pretty extreme. I certainly believe in ancient aliens. I believed in them from a long time, which doesn't include just your typical alien, but all kinds of different beings, demigods that came down to help assist people with civilization and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's not a stretch for me, but it's pretty weird for most people to think about that. That we had divine bloodlines that were pre-existing to the human form. I'll put it that way.
Mm. I agree there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Francis Bacon was 1561? Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, if you believe that's the time frame. I'm sure Jake would know. He's talking to the screen right now. If he watches, he's like, yes.
Oh yeah. Okay, so when did Rosicrucianism kind of start?
That is a good question. First known, blossoming of it is going to be with the Fama Furtatus, and when the Fama Furtatus was published for the first time, because that is when anybody was really talking about it.
Okay, was that in the 1500s?
Good question. I have a copy of the Fama Furtatus.
Okay.
But because I haven't read it yet. That's really a Jake question.
Oh yeah, Jake would totally know that off the top of his head.
I'm sure he knows it off the top of his head right now.
Okay, well here's my basic question though.
1614, Dave. 1614 is what they say. It's not 1500s.
Okay. All right. For some reason, I thought there were some plates or something from the early 1500s that were odes to Rosicrucianism. I could be totally wrong about that.
That is entirely possible. They do not talk about that. I will say that the groundwork like this kind of theophosy was already alive and well in Germany during that time frame. And it's very surprisingly, but I suppose not so surprising because of the like I'm saying here, the Jacob Boehm's work there. It was just another form of theophosy to them. They had multiple forms running around in there, and the Rosicrucianisms really blossomed in Germany. They took it and ran with that.
So was that...
They were already doing Hermetic order stuff, so...
Okay, so were their progenitors like the Teutonic Knights, maybe? Possibly Knights Templar or something like that?
Well, there were, so the Knights Templar didn't have just anyone. The Knights Templar had like camps, I guess you would want to call them, military bases all over the place. And certainly they had some over there. These parts of Germany that I'm talking about, they're on the French-German border. So they're right over there near the Knights Templar region of origin in the first place, where the people were prominent. We're talking North Germany.
Yeah, fascinating. I agree with you, Aimee.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say something really quick. I agree with you that these are long-standing traditions that, I would say for sure, as far as I'm concerned, they predate the formation of the actual society or the actual, secret society group or whatever. These things have been, and I've been trying to teach this for a long time to everyone, is that these are traditions that come out of cosmic knowledge. It's like how at the beginning of creation, how are things designed and set up? And then for me, what people do is they just kind of break it down. They make it like palatable to them. It's whatever way that they like to explain it, and they use whatever motif they feel comfortable with. But for me, it's the same thing. So when I see these iconography and symbology, I'm like, guys, just, to me, it drives me crazy because I'm a scientist. I just want to say what it is, and let's get all the junk out of the way. I don't need the symbology. I just want to say, oh, this is actually what this is right here, and let's move past that.
And but they're playing a game.
Oh, absolutely.
They're playing a game because they've always been playing a game.
Yeah.
Right. These secret societies. And that's one of the things I think with them that makes me crazy when people talk about them, and they talk about them like they're doing such good for the community and they're just for equality for all. No, they're not. Why if they're for equality for all? I'm not saying that some of the charity work they might not benefit humanity. I'm sure it does. Okay, I have not walked around keeping track of everything they're doing. But if they're for equality of all, why do you have to be related to one of them to get in? You can't just go sign up with the Masons. You can't just sign up with these secret societies. You have to be invited, right? They have to find you. How are they finding you? What the heck is that about? It's easy for them to find you because they're related to you. If you go deep into that Rosicrucian manual, there is a spot in there where it tells you, and this is the 1914 Rosicrucian manual. So it's the Amarak, or 1938. I'm sorry, it was the last time it was republished. 1918 was the first time it was published. The Amarak manual, it will tell you that you need to be in contact with another Rosicrucian every 2 hours. And this isn't a time, place where we're talking about that we're, did they even have the ballpoint pen yet? Are we still, we're path writing with quills, but come on. Think about that time frame that we're talking about. That is a challenging thing to do in 1938. The only way to do that is to make sure that everybody you're spending all your time with is in one of these societies. Which, if they're related to them and you're all living in the same house, it's not a challenge, is it?
Right. So basically, it's a control mechanism to make sure they stay in power, is what I feel about it. And then what's unfortunate about it to me is that I think that the real core teachings of it have been misconstrued and lost by most of the group, if not almost all of the group, depending on the society. Because like I said to Aimee before the show, if I'm going to talk about ancient wisdom, I go straight to ancient India, guys. I don't mess about with anything else because, in my opinion, you don't really need anything else. The core teachings, I guarantee you, are in ancient India. And I'm thankful, very thankful, that they haven't been all destroyed, like probably most of what used to be in ancient Egypt and probably most of what used to be in ancient Mesopotamia, all this stuff that got destroyed and pillaged and all this. it's not that hard to me. And so to me, as a secret society is really foolish to me. I'm not trying to, but having said that, I'm not trying to control the narrative and maintain power over civilizations, because you know why? Because I don't believe in that. That's why. I believe in humans being nice to each other, being generous and kind, having open knowledge. They used to have open, where was this? Yeah, I guess it was ancient Samaria. According to the one book I was reading, they used to have open forums in ancient Samaria where you would have kings sitting next to homeless people, or like princes sitting next to homeless people, and they would have a discussion, and like people would be civil to each other, and then when it was over, you went your own way. That's what I believe in right there. And actually the quote that you sent me, Aimee, I don't know if you want to share that with people, but that was amazing, in terms of just let people tell their story, guys. You never know what they have to share. And it's also, as long as they're being respectful, it's just also honoring people's agency. Give them a chance, for goodness sake. It's not going to kill you. It's just ridiculous.
It's very controlling. It's a very controlling place to be from, right? Because these tenets and these teachings, you have to remember who you're talking about once you start getting into the nobility, and it explains why it is that they had this attitude in the first place, and why the hiding of information. And that is because in these noble families, right, where they all believe they're divine, right, but only the oldest son gets anything, right, and the rest of the children will set you up the best you can. But and gets anything by that, I mean the oldest son gets to have an income guaranteed by his father. He gets to inherit his father's wealth, whatever the father has earned, which of course came from his parents and so on and so forth, and try to, work to make it bigger. But it's not really work. His job is to make sure his land runs and he doesn't go bankrupt. That's why there's so many entitled people. These people are the definition of the word entitled, because they literally held titles, right? That's where the whole idea comes from. And it does move forward into the rest of this stuff, but it also sets up this adversarial relationship with your siblings, because your number one, barrier in your brain to getting that resource, to having that comfortable life, is your older sibling. So that's why they start killing each other off. That's why they start going to wars. That's why you start seeing all these atrocious things. And what you'll really, if you take a good solid look at history and you really start going through and taking a look at what was going on in the world during those timeframes, during those wars, those conflicts, and you start looking at the problems society was having, i.e. the country where the wars were having, and you're going to find that they mirror each other, because society's problems are nobility's problems.
Oh, yeah.
Because they created the society in which we live. They still have influence. Even here in America, where we both are, they still have influence here. Their influence has still touched all of our laws, because we came from those countries, and our founding fathers came from those countries. They came from those. Our founding fathers were not poor people. They were people of nobility. George Washington, people of nobility. A lot of American presidents, direct descendants of nobility.
I think most of them were Freemasons as well, right, Aimee?
Yeah, they were. A lot of them
actually,
were
maybe. I'm going to say almost all of them, I was going to say. I just remember.
I'll get to this in the slide. We're jumping ahead. So all these secret societies come from nobility, right? The next up, this is specifically for Sir Francis Bacon, because he is the founder of the Rosicrucians. Now, it depends on how you feel from the Rosicrucians, where you feel the Masons came from. There is a lot of dispute about where the Masons come from, because, of course, there's a cover story. Now, the Masons come out talking about things in the 1700s. That doesn't mean that's when they were founded. That's when they decided to go public. That's not the same thing, right? Because somebody found out. If I had to wager any amount of money, I'm going to wager that somebody's wife talked to somebody whose husband wasn't in that group, and something carrying forward. And I'll go why in a minute.
Yeah.
So Sir Francis Bacon, they flat out just say, this is from the 1938 Rosicrucian manual, that he is the founder. And the Amarak just states that he's the founder of this stuff. And that they also very specifically state that there was a voyage, which on Jake's show, when it was, trying to remember the name of that individual, Ryan came on. The guy was in Arkansas looking for the bones. He was talking about this. Yep. Yeah, he was talking about this right here. This is the text he was talking about at the very end there when he was talking about the ship. This is in their thing where they talk about that there was a ship that departed here to Philadelphia in early 1694. And this is,
they left from Europe, you're saying, right?
They gathered in Germany and then came over to England and then were specifically sent by the English crown.
Okay.
Remember, at this time, Sir Francis Bacon is no longer there, right? But he had already had his influence, right, under Queen Elizabeth's court, right? So it's the future has already been set there. These things have already been set in motion. Some people fully believing that he indeed did set about orders, because he did set about orders to send Rosicrucians to the New World. Okay, this was a thing he had in motion. So this is what people feel like he did.
I believe also, Aimee, that the Rosicrucians probably started the modern civilization in North America. I feel very strongly about that.
They were here a lot earlier than 1694. This is just one of those things where I found this because there's a cross connection with this book. And then I found this really very elaborate book that was like this manuscript of old family texts that somebody decided to make public. They found some of their ancestors' old texts from that thing. And they were openly Rosicrucians. Those Rosicrucians very flatly say that they started the first school systems and orphanages in Pennsylvania in 16.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Now, there's other references where you can go back to other voyages that came across in 1632 and 1634, again from England to the New World. And on those ships, one was called the Elizabeth. There was another one at that time that indeed was also called the Hopewell, just not the Sarah Marie Hopewell. And in both of those ships, they carry a lot of founding father names like Adams's and things like that. And they marry into other families. And I can trace the families that these various ones move into. I have. And they march right over to the not only to the area of interest, both areas of interest in which Zena brings up in her book in that upstate New York area, and as well as heading over into Nova Scotia, and indeed some of those families landing themselves minimally in Luxembourg up that way, or Lunenburg, I should say, Lunenburg up that way. There's, in fact, it's a weird thing that goes on there with Lunenburg. There are several Lunenburgs strategically placed all along the coastline going from Nova Scotia all the way down to Virginia. And I find that to be highly suspicious because most of these people, firstly, that we're coming across were English. They're not Germans. Mm-hmm. Why are you naming it Lunenburg? Like they used to do that, name an area after where if enough of the immigrants came from that place in the mother country, whatever that mother country was, they would name that town that because they were they're from there now.
Pretty much all of New England is that way. I mean, I grew up in New England. Mm-hmm. And well, I mean, even then the phrase New England, it's talking about this is the New England, but then you've got New York, which I believe used to be called New Amsterdam, I believe.
That's correct.
And it just goes literally like Topsom, like all of these places in England. You've got like Gloucester, and it's all European names.
Yeah,
so they just brought it over.
What was weird to me about this is that this is not the way this was done. Like the way that this process happened in this settling of these places, this is not the way this is done. This is if we were going to do this, it'd be like, okay, Captain Dave, you got your sailing ship. We're going to send you over with your supplies. Pick your most reliable lieutenants. We're going to give each one of them a plot of land. You're going to be in charge of this general area. We're going to call you governor now. And from this place to this place, from this tree to that river, from this notable mountain to this thing over there, that's your thing now, divided up amongst your lieutenants and then amongst your settlers. And the thing with that, with being that rank of captain, you were likely second or third son of some noble person who went into the military because your family didn't have, money to let you live off of forever. So you had to go find a job, and you were likely a little bit resentful. Now, in addition, you go found this place. It's usually in this area. Almost never is there a charter where you have this spread out amongst the coast. Like, what is that? Why did that even occur?
Mm-hmm.
That's not supposed to happen that way. It's highly suspicious, especially when all the names start overlapping.
Well, okay. So, and of course, what you're suggesting is there was a plan and a reason for doing that, because they had their eyes on a future continent and country and civilization, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, they had some sort of plan for it. I'm not sure exactly what that plan is, but I can tell you that for sure that if you start chasing those names down, you're running right into Masonic and Rosicrucian families.
I believe
you overlap it up into the Knights Templar. That's because they're the same families.
Oh, definitely. I believe it has a lot to do with probably two different concepts, one being the New Atlantis and the other one being the New Jerusalem. I believe it's between those two. That's the reason why they came over here and set up, their institutions and all this stuff, because they know more about the ancient stories than we do. And but sometimes I question how much I actually do know. I actually don't even know anymore. All I know is that we can teach ancient history and ancient wisdom without societies. If people want to be part of that, that's not my business, but I don't personally believe in that. Also, I believe that JFK is the one that said, the United States of America is no place for secret societies. And I believe he was killed for that, among other things. Because, again, how much democracy can you have when there's secrecy? It's like, it's a very good point to think about, because I think it limits the true democracy.
That's kind of funny that JFK said that. So JFK is a descendant of Robert the Bruce. They appeared like royalty to the American people because they are in fact a descendant of royalty. So they are, in fact, that's a seventh cousin. He's a seventh cousin once removed, JFK, because I'm a Kennedy. So, and they make that, there are a lot of Kennedys in secret societies.
Oh yeah.
So maybe he just had a distaste for it the way I did, because I don't particularly like them. Now
he probably had enough, and he probably had some sense to see that it hasn't worked out that well for everyone in history, by acting that way.
Well, I would say it works out really well for a select few.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It's all about positions of power. And that's one of the things when you're in one of those families. You don't have autonomy. You are not really somebody's kid, especially further back in history you go. You can find that, nowadays, hopefully everybody's done a whole bunch of healing and, we're happy thoughts for these people in modern era. But you start going back in time, what you really have is, employees that happen to be related to you. These ladies, that are in these noble families, these other, people, they didn't get a choice. Nobody was asking these kids who they wanted to get married to.
Yeah.
Right. They were, all of it was very specific. Now, what I've got up here is further stuff on the Freemasons where just further supports things. So to go into one of your subject matters, there's more than 21 signers of the Declaration of Independence that were Masons. You also, part of the reason why you might get somebody going, I don't like these secret societies, and they have to not be, because in Europe, the Masons were known for plotting against the royal governments. And that really isn't about the betterment of the rest of humanity. That is about hey, how can you be more divine than me when we have the same DNA?
Well, and of course, to me, it's a complete, I say complete, but there's a lot of hypocrisy with that, because to me, divinity is being kind and gentle and generous. And anyone who says anything besides that is full of shit, in my opinion. Excuse my language, but that's not God. God does not have that attribute of being selfish and hoarding things and being dismissive of other people and other beings.
Agreed.
So ridiculous.
Agreed.
But I want to add this too, Aimee, that and to your point too, is that the more power that you have, it may look to the outsiders like, oh yeah, you have all the freedom to control this, but you're actually really shackled. I mean, if you make a misstep, it could end your life. It could end all kinds of in very bad ways for you
Right.
and your family line. So for anyone who thinks, oh yeah, they must have a great plush life, well, yeah, maybe they have the comforts and stuff, but like every night they go to bed, they're being like, I can't misstep. I have to make sure I say this correctly. I have to make sure I don't burn this bridge with this person and with this person. Then you got to keep it organized in your head, what you said to this person versus what you said to this person. So I don't envy that at all, you know, and I
No.
hope one day we can move past that.
It's a very particular little incestuous, because they
Yep.
are all related to each other, weird toxic dynamic going on in there. It's all toxicity, right? It's just, I mean, you have to think about how many fights. If anybody's got siblings, I've got an older brother and a younger sibling. How many, arguments do you get into with your siblings when you're little about nonsense? Or when you're teenagers? It's even worse when you're teenagers. You're both all full of all the hormones. You can't control yourselves. You're lippy, right? You're aggressive. You get into those arguments. Only if at that time, that teenage kid that's your big brother is the king, you're dead, man. You're dead. Because he has the right. He believes that God talks directly to him.
Yep.
And whatever he says is God's commandment, no matter what it is. Because they were the head of the church.
Well, I think what makes it really difficult too is that we have this very interesting Earth system, and of course, I teach about cosmic law and all these different topics. And when you set up a system, I mean, we do actually have plenty of resources. You know, we know how to do agriculture really well. We can ship the produce all around the world if it's not the right growing season. If you live in a cold climate or something, we know how to build houses very well. We know how to heat things very well and cool things. But the point is that on this planet, it certainly appears to be this way, is that if you want to keep things according to a certain narrative, then you have to try to arrest control from the rest of society so you can ensure that it goes the way that you want. Now, my ideal, and I teach the Earth system is one system among infinite systems in the universe. It's one tiny system. But in this particular system, it's I don't like the starting premise. You know, I'm very forward with that in the fact that when you put all kinds of different consciousnesses and different kinds of bodies on the same planet, and everyone has their own idea of what they want, and you're forced to interact with each other, you have a closed system, and it's going to be corrupted. I guarantee that. You can't, because you got strong people who are completely opposed to each other. So what I'd like to see for the future of the universe, really, not just the Earth system, is that well, it's hard. I mean, it's a lot of it's karmic for me, but what I'd like to see is to have people be able to be who they are and not affect other people that are not interested in what they have to say or what they do. So basically, like, you can go off your own planet and do all that stuff that you like and you want to treat people that way. Okay. So the people who are going to be there when you get there are going to be people just like you. Just like you. So when you do something inappropriate to them, they're gonna be at your back immediately because that's how you are. You know, whereas the people like myself, the place that I go to, it's all about generosity and kindness. You know, and to all the men out there, if there's any guys listening to this, that does not mean that there's a discount of masculinity, because for me, the true masculinity is taking care of other people. That's really what that means to me, and it's not this destructive, kind of disgusting, toxic masculinity. It has nothing to do with it. You're actually supposed to control that and channel it into making things stable for the people you care about and for your society. That's what I believe.
Yeah. Those are all good tenets to believe, Dave.
So we've got
certainly not what these people do.
No, but you know what? Because I really try to see both sides of everything. And when you, like we were talking about before, is that when you have a system where you're constantly pushed against the wall, and that the structure of your country and society depends on you having relationships with all kinds of different people, some of who you probably, I'm sure, don't agree with morally, but you have to do it because they're the ones, maybe one of those families is the family who's producing energy for your country. So like you don't agree with them and they're like maybe not good people at all, but like if you don't work with them, then you don't have energy for your country. So that's the stuff that happens on this planet. It's not clear as we all like it to be.
No,
But
there's no clear good. Humans are too complex for that. We're not
Yeah.
we're not archetypes. We just tend to fall into groups, and that's where archetypes come from.
Yeah, and what I do too, Aimee, is that I ask people who are interested. I say like, what kind of world would you create if it was up to you? How would you do it? And a lot of people actually don't really even know what to say, which is kind of shocking to me. I think about it every day. And you know, I have a list of how things would be if it was up to me in terms of what the law structure would look like. It would be based on it's a moral law structure. It's not a productivity law structure like it is at least in North America. I mean, it's probably most of the world that way. But I've talked to Native American tribes, and one of the clan mothers, who's I think she's probably in her 70s for sure. She said to me, she's like, why does it always have to be about production? It's like all of the energies of life is like, how can we make more? How can we do it faster? How can we make more profit? She's like, stop. That's not what I value, you know? And if it takes you, I mean, when it comes to food and stuff, you know, slightly different story because you need to make sure you have the food supply, but we have the technology for that. We've had it for a long time. But the thing that I agree with her is that what's the difference if it takes you 4 days to make a dress for someone or 7 days to make a dress for someone? I don't care. I'll wait 10 days. I'll wait 14 days. I want the person making it to put the love into it and to put the happiness into it because I believe it does get infused with that. I don't want people rushing. That's ridiculous. And when you finish the work, I want you to be able to go home and be happy with your life and smile, you know, and be able to sleep well at night.
Yeah, it's always about productiveness because it favors the people who are in charge. That's what it comes down to.
It does,
favors the commerce side of things, which, you know, still again goes back. The idea that you could have truly have economic equality in this country is not nearly as open as what people would like to think.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, there's a closed system there. It is about who you know, not just you know, right?
Well,
not that you can't rise up, because there are people who do. It's just they make it real hard. So you got to play a real particular role.
You may have to, even if you're not networking with someone who has influence, you still may have to play their game. Even if you're climbing it yourself, I'm sure you agree with me, but even if you're trying to climb the ladder yourself, if you're not getting a boost, you still generally have to play within a framework that's probably not your framework. Agreed. So it's just this is the issues with this world, is that like people talk about free will, and I'm like, not really. We think we have a lot more than we do. But then, of course, there's astrology, which I talk a lot about in terms of boxing you into some of your components when you're born, how you are, how you act, how you react, stuff like that. But then on top of that, you've got this 1,000-year structure, this social structure and financial structure that you just like suddenly get born into, and it's not as if you can say, just make the pronouncement, no, we're not going to do work this way because I don't believe in this. If the culture is driving it the other way, and you don't have support, then you have to play that game, or you're going to be destitute. You know, it's like not much of a choice.
They don't really leave you much of a choice, and it's not meant to. I mean, if you even just read what I got up there on the screen with some of that stuff, you start by the time you're in the 1700s, before we have, America is even America, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've already got a crossing over of the Masons and the Rosicrucians. We've already got them referencing each other because they're already related to each other. Because they're already in there. They've actually got the exact same grades to each other. They cover the exact same. So they're when I say theophosy, of course, is just a religious kind of like tenet. It's a psychology thought process, right? And it's not any one thing. It's just the definition of, right? Well, if you actually go crossover and you look at one of the other extremes of this, when you're talking about this kind of thing from the Masons to Rosicrucians, you find the spiritualist. I'm talking about those ones. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, was a part of that group. Blavatsky, spiritualists. well, when Blavatsky stopped, being alive, they handed that whole group over to this family called the Tingelis. It's like, well, Tingelis they're a Masonic family. I mean, they are, and I know that because I'm related to the Tingelis, and we're a Masonic family. Where it's like, and pretty deep in there with this, so it's all the same thing, and it all overlaps all over the place. And they've hidden the clues all over, which is part of one of those other things I do on my channel is I read tarot cards. I read tarot cards by astrological sign. Now I do give an astrological forecast at the beginning of that, so they know what the feel is for the days that the reading is, because I can kind of go through with the way I lay out and kind of go, these cards over here represent about this day range. These cards over here represent about that day range. So you would know where you are in the astrology if you had choices to make. And part of how it all ended up wrapping up together, and I've been reading tarot since I was 13 years old, and I was raised in one of these kinds of families. My grandpa on one side was a Shriner. It was totally normal for me to be a toddler running around the house wearing a fez. I went to this church group kind of thing at 3 or 4 years old that is called the Awanas. And at the time we were called the Sparkies, but they were called the Sparks. You got a vest and you got patches for Jesus Bible stories. All right. Now they were in association with the Shriners. It was that side of the family that took me there. So when they start this stuff, I'm young, 3, 4 years old, they start you with this stuff. Right. And the other side of the family, you got one of the other peoples in here with these Masonic organizations. So Grandpa was in the Shriners. To be in the Shriners, you have to get to the top of either the Scottish or the York Rite, or at least you did when he did. Nowadays, you don't have to.
Oh, okay.
You can be a Master Mason.
You have to go through Freemasons first before you can be a Shriner. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to make it to Master Mason before you can join any of these other organizations.
I remember when I was a kid watching some of the parades, and there were Shriners with their banner, out front. Mm-hmm. I'm talking like a street parade, and mm-hmm. I always thought it was interesting. I'm like, why are you guys, you mentioned the fez. I'm like, why are you guys, I didn't say this to them, but why are you wearing that hat? What does that mean? Why are we, what do you actually do in your organization?
It goes back to Egypt.
Oh, to Egypt, yeah. It was always very mysterious, and I believe there's a lot of crossover, like you mentioned before, between a lot of the Arabic culture and traditions with what was in Africa, and then also in Europe, and then also the trade routes coming from India back and forth. So a lot of these things, I believe, is a lot of mixture. But fortunately, from my perspective, it's the teachings are essentially identical. If you take away all the symbolism, it's the same thing. Now, what you're doing behind the scenes, I'm not going to even get into that, because anything that's done in secret is, for me, probably not going to come out with things that are good for the rest of humanity. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, and without anything that's direct proof, that's a dangerous path. It's one thing for us to express our opinions. It's another thing for us to go through and make accusations, right? So,
absolutely. But sometimes I question the viability of some of the courts in this country, just because I feel like, in terms of who is putting that person in that position, you see people in presidents and things waiting. They wait so that they can make sure they get their appointment. Well, hey, if it's truly non-bipartisan, then you shouldn't be doing that. You should pick the person who's going to do a good job. So
you should, but that's not their. It's a club.
Well, and that's
it's still a club.
That's why I believe, as a populace, we need to question decisions that are made. Do it. You want to try to do it in a way that's peaceable, but all I'm saying is that there's been uprisings through all of history, and if something inappropriate is being put on the people, you should make your voice heard, and you really should do what you have to, because we're dealing with that a lot now in this world. So seeing things happen, you're like, I didn't sanction that. Like, who elected this person? Again, I'm not advocating for violence. All I'm saying is that you can't let that stuff slide. It's so obvious that something bad is happening. We need to hold I'm saying everyone. Everyone needs to be held accountable to the same standard. I don't believe that's happening.
No, it's not. There's a different standard for the people who are in power. They don't have to follow the same rules that you do, because they have the abilities to get out of it.
Yeah, so, they've got the money and influence. Yeah.
No. This goes more to your point. This right here on this side is more from the exodus of the fatherland for the ship over here. But on the other side here goes to your other point. Now, this is from the Order of the Eastern Star, which isn't a Masonic organization. Now, for reference sake, my mother read for the chair of, I do believe it was Electa, but I might be wrong there. I think it was Electa. My great grandmother read for the chair of Ruth, and my grandparents, mom's parents, were the worthy matron and the worthy patron of the Skokie chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. And my grandfather's sister was the grand matron, and her husband was the grand patron for the Illinois chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. Now, this is supposed to be a women's chapter, but you can't convene without the worthy patron there. You can't hold rights without the men there. And
all of those meetings has to have a man present, and it's the women's chapter.
Correct.
Wow, I don't like that at all.
No, I've gone through there. I have a book, and I went through the book. This is a section from the book. I review the book on my channel. I go through it's many videos because I go through it in great detail, and it's a whole lot in there about what the women who are married to these Masons, because it's basically how it is that you get into this group.
Okay.
Because if you're not married to them, then minimally you're their daughter or something like that before you're allowed to get in. Owe to the Masons. Nothing about what the Masons owe these women, but what these women who go through their own rituals here, and I go through absolutely every single ritual. They're all in there in the book. What they owe. And it's all Bible stories. Now, if you were to go through and you actually looked at the seats and you look at the Bible stories, I'm like, I don't think that's what that story means. That's not the way I remember them teaching that in church. Because my mom decided not to stay in the Eastern Star. When her mom passed, she left. My dad was invited into the Lions Club. Now, the Lions Club is a recruitment ground for the Masons. And he was in the Lions Club for a little while. And I don't know what he heard, but he decided he didn't like it. And he left.
How about the Rotary Club? How about that one?
I do not have any knowledge of what the Rotary Club is involved with anything else. It would not surprise me in the least if that was the case, but I don't know any for fact. But I find interesting in that previous slide over here, it's this part right here. If you would like to read that out loud there, Dave.
My screen's a little small, Amy. I would, but yeah, I would love that. Yeah.
In the organization of our society, it is necessary that some should rule and others should serve.
Oh, that's the whole thing?
That is that just, everything about that just strikes me as wrong. Everything about it is wrong. Think about that verbiage.
I don't like the term rule at all.
I don't like the term serve either. Like, because if you follow someone, that's voluntary. You are my leader and I choose to follow you, right? But if you're serving is, that's, servant, right? That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing at all. I don't like it. It sits completely wrong with me.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, there's if you're truly in service of your neighbors and your community and everything, there's ways to be really clear about that. Every show that I do, whether it's my show or if I'm on a show with someone else, I'm very upfront with what I expect and what I believe, and how my actions better support what I state. Otherwise, I give anyone authorization to call me out on it. So the specific one I'm talking about is that if you go up in front of people, and give a speech, and you're truly about for the good of society and humanity and everything, you want to make that very clear at the very beginning of the speech. First of all, don't don't feel like it's put on. You know, I don't need the pomp and circumstance. I don't need the over exaggeration. I don't need you to make it into like a drama, like a theatrical performance. So if I was to do a speech, I get up there and be like, hey guys, how's it going? Welcome. Basically like I'm talking to another person. And what I would say is that, I'm in service to my community. The decisions I make is for everyone's good. I make it clear that I am interested in having feedback. Please provide, anything that you guys think would make this better, because we're open to this as a community. And when you make statements like that consistently, people are not really that suspicious of you anymore. And then if they see your actions and like they see that on a Saturday you're in the soup kitchen, you're actually serving the homeless people, and you're the leader and you're in there with everyone else doing that, then guess what? People will actually love you. But what happens is the politicians get up there, someone asks a question, either they don't answer at all, they just straight ignore them, or they evade the question. It's like, dude, we know you're full of shit because you're not answering their question. Try your best to answer their question. There's a few people who I've seen who field questions that do a good job, But for everyone else, I'm just like, guys, you're making it a problem for yourself because you're not being open to the people that you're supposed to be leading. And so, yes, of course, they're going to be suspicious of you. So don't get pissed off at them when they are. It's foolish.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in today's society, it doesn't really work the same way anymore as it used to. But these things were not set up. These communities are not set up for that. I mean, these groups are crazy. I'm going to stop the screen share now because this is just reference. Okay. But these groups are a little bit like, I went through those manuals and I went through them very, very, like I said, very detailed. I mean, they are proceeding over funerals. They are like, they talk about what it is to be in a meeting. Okay. And when you're in meeting with them, like one person talks. That's it. You have to raise your hand and ask permission to leave the room to go to the bathroom. All right. It's not equitable. It's not even close to equitable. And that's regardless of, which one of those that you're in. But in the Rosicrucian manual, if you actually really go through it in detail, the only person who, besides your leader there, was like basically your Grand Maester kind of same person, right? That is your imperator is what they're calling them. Is supposed to be this other position, and it's like I'm going to pronounce the other word, the actual position title wrong, but it's essentially the Vestal Virgin. There's a 13 to 21-year-old girl. You have to be between the ages of 13 to 18 to start service. Must be a female. And then by the time you're 21, you're not allowed to hold the position anymore. And it's supposed to be in this out of the mouths of babes stance from that thing. And that's the only other person besides your leader that's supposed to even be speaking during service. You're sitting there listening to sermon.
So they have a young girl do that and they tell her what to say. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Well, I don't know if they necessarily tell her what to say. She doesn't speak for the whole thing. She tends to the fire that is supposed to be staying lit the entire time that a service is going.
Okay.
And if you needed to get up rather than going and interrupting, what is essentially the preacher, your leader in that group, you would go to her to tell her what is needed. And she would give you permission to basically go leave the room. Or you could go over to her and ask for advice. And if you go ask for her for advice, it's supposed to be like out of the mouths of babes. Now, what kind of teaching and coaching she gets? I mean, you don't just let a 13-year-old do this. I mean, obviously you're going to have trained this person. You'll have indoctrinated them. It's not hard because they started indoctrinating them at 3 and 4 years old, calling it Bible study.
Okay, which group is this, Aimee? Is this a lot of these places
the
they do this?
Rosicrucians, pretty specifically, I'm talking about right
here.
Okay, these are positions within the Rosicrucians, but it doesn't really matter. What you'll find in the backbone behind all of these things is really the golden order, the Hermetic order. It's that that's who it is. So you're starting with that alchemical process there, and then it just carries over all over the place. And it's it is everywhere. That alchemy has woven its way through every ancient culture that there is. So that's why you find all the overlap.
And it's, of course, been wholly perverted, in my opinion, because it's the tenets. If anyone's ever questioning something, first of all, I would say go with your initial feeling. Like, you want to trust your instinct. In addition, if you don't feel like it feels good or feels proper, feels right, then like maybe it doesn't, and maybe look into it. You want to trust that intuition. And then the thing for me is that like, nothing I teach has anything to do with secrecy at all, 0%. Basically, I say open arms. If people want to learn it, guys, you know where to come to my channel, send me a message. And that's how it's supposed to be done properly. And you know what? The people who are going to respond to it and understand it, then it's for them. And everyone else, either it goes over their head, Aimee, or they're not interested. That's no problem. But you have to, just like if I go into a Christian church, for instance, they will give me a Bible free of charge because they want me to learn their spiritual traditions. As a counterexample, and I'm not saying this is the way for all the time, I'm just going to say what happened to me, is that when I asked for a copy of the Quran, I was in Canada actually at the time, they didn't want to give it to me without charging me. And I was standing there like shaking my head. I'm like, are you guys serious? Spirituality that's supposed to be being generous and kind, giving freely and all this stuff, and you like don't trust me with your book or something. It's like, why did they set up a like a public exposition, so they were actually out there to interact with people. And then I say, guys, can I have a copy of the Quran? And they didn't want to give it to me. They went in the back room and like discussed for like 5 minutes, and like I was out there by myself. Like, they didn't even tell me what was going on. And then I didn't even want it by the time they came back. They finally agreed to give it to me. But it's like, why are you being suspicious of me? Are you kidding me? You're starting it off on bad grounds with me. So I already don't feel good about the energy you're putting out. We need to be more aware of this stuff.
Well, most people are not aware of the energy they put out, Dave. I mean, that's
true.
really what it comes down to. I mean, most people think because so much of our society, right? So much of North America, because it doesn't even really matter, right? Or even when you start getting into South America, because of the colonization process that happened there, that tragedy that was, so much of that society is set up by these secret societies. All of it is set up. The game is set up. It's set up by this. There's no part of the American government where you're not going to find the fingers of old European ways of Masonic culture, of the Rosicrucians. You're going to find them. There's secret societies all over the place. Most of the American presidents have been in a majority of secret societies.
Yeah.
They have even more secret societies once you start getting into like, Yale and stuff, right? I mean, they're even more in there, right? And think about what a fraternity is. What is a sorority? Why do you even need them? Why do colleges have them?
Yeah.
Why are those clubs even in existence? Like what all that is preparing your young, adult children for entrance into other secret societies.
That's what it feels like.
As they get older, because not everybody just gets in, right? If it's not equitable, they don't just let everybody in. Now, and that's not going to be true of every sorority or every fraternity. I mean, but there's enough of them.
Yeah. Well, what I always felt about it too was that I didn't know anything about them going into college, But when I got into college, I wanted to know what they did, what they represented and stuff. And then I start reading stories about all this hazing and all this ridiculous activity happening inside that. Mm-hmm. But because to me, the truth, I have nothing against the term like brotherhood or sisterhood, but you better toe the mark, meaning that you better be, for me, essentially the term I would probably use is a Christ-like person. You better have that as your example. And if you don't, then you're a liar. You're a total liar. And I don't believe it. Any smart person is going to see that you're a complete hypocrite in terms of what you're saying versus your actions. So ideally, I would love to have a group of people, and it wouldn't be a secret society. It would be people who are able and willing to be able to discuss at high levels, so we can have responsible people in positions that are going to influence a lot of the community. I just look around me. I'm just absolutely disgusted. I'm like, I look around again. I'm not picking a certain person out. All I'm saying is that we have to take a look around, and when you see the dysfunction, follow the storyline, go back as far as you can, and see that there's actually like precedence for all this stuff. And like Aimee was saying, certainly seems that way to me, is that a lot of the sororities and fraternities, as an example, are preparations for the next step. And these, a lot of the people in there, you know, they come from wealthy families. Again, that doesn't mean anything necessarily. I'm just making the point because that's what I've noticed. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those families are, I mean, I've seen the actions of people that I consider quite crass, mm-hmm. Very unrefined, and just sometimes downright offensive. And I can't believe people who who claim to be upholding some of the high tenets of society are actually acting this way. They're acting like, I'm not going to say criminals. That's probably pushing it. Well, in some cases it would be, but you know what? Thugs is the word that I want to use.
Yeah.
You're just pushing people aside and saying, "Oh yeah, we know we're doing it for the good of everyone." No, I don't know about that, guys, because people who are don't act like that.
It's people hurting people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because they come from these families where there's this high level of dysfunction. Nobody just wakes up one morning after living a perfectly happy life and goes, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out to the store today and I'm going to be a jerk to the cashier. Like, no, something happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
Something happens. And either you've lost your cool in that moment, in which case you need to apologize, right? You need to be like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have behaved that way. I shouldn't treat you like that. And, you know, treat other people they're human beings. You got to treat them with dignity. But most of the time, that kind of thing, unless you have that really weird, odd, bad day, right? You just, you know, if you're a hurt person, it makes people feel, when you're a hurt person, especially if you're in a toxic mental state, it makes you feel better if somebody hurts the way you hurt, because then I'm not alone in my hurt. So it people hurting people.
Oh yeah. And you can some people try to transfer that to the other person so that you don't have to experience that, whether that's conscious or subconscious. It happens all the time.
Agreed. Right. You're trying to put your pain on somebody else because momentarily, if they're hurting more than you feel a little bit better about you. And it's all just toxicity and dysfunction. That's all it is. It's, the whole world could do with a good, healthy dose of therapy.
Oh,
and then it would be nicer to each other as a whole. And that's really what it's about. If you actually are following the actual tenets of all this stuff, it's really all just about healing. It's about your individual healing journey, and that is how you elevate in consciousness and how you elevate your vibration to become a better person within the world that you're in. And that's how you call in your blessings. The more good you do for others, right? Because you're healing yourself, right? Instead of choosing to engage in that drama, don't choose to engage in that drama. That person's being a jerk to you. You don't need to out jerk that jerk. You can, if you're protecting someone else, but if all it's going to do is stir up more drama in your life and bring more drama to you, why out jerk that jerk? That would be your hurt parts wanting to hurt, back.
Well, and also if they get the sense that you actually have a lot of dignity and you're not someone to be trifled with, you can stand your ground without being that way. And actually they start to feel self-conscious because they look like an idiot now. Because you have so much self-control over yourself and over your space. Be like, yo, bro, not today. Okay, we're not doing that today, man. I got stuff to do. Peace out. We'll see you later. And I'm not gonna stand there and fight them. I'm just gonna be like, okay, you know what, dude? I'm not today, and I go on my way. And they're standing there, and since they can't engage me, now they feel stupid. And I'm not doing it to make them feel stupid. I'm doing it because I'm not interested in participating in anything that they're putting out there, and then that comes secondary on a secondary basis is what happens.
Exactly. It's not healthy for you. So you're just not going to engage in it. And that's probably the most powerful thing you can, if you know that you're interacting with a person who deliberately goes and stirs crap up. Like we all know those people where they're looking for the drama. They want the gossip. They're going to go look to stir crap up. They're going to, did you hear about this thing? And just tell those people to go away. They go away. Like, I don't have time for this.
Sometimes I'm just like, you know what, man, I actually don't give a shit. Tell it to someone that cares about that. And then I'll just turn and walk away. I don't care. I don't care. And I'm not being rude. All I'm doing is I'm saying, this is where I stand on this topic. I don't care. I literally don't care. Tell someone else. And if they're going to listen to you, go for it.
Well, it's the Eleanor Roosevelt thing. That's what I like to take it back to. That quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. That's like, what is it? So great minds discuss ideas, and average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people.
Yeah.
So there's just no need. Like, the only reason you should be discussing another person is if that person is like, there's wonderful blessing things that you want to say. Hey, did you hear this great news about this person for this person? Like, how wonderful, because then you're spreading more of that positivity towards them. And that's a wonderful thing. Or if, oh, did you hear about that really sad thing? We have to make sure we keep them in our prayers. Right. Okay. Right. Because again, not malice in any way, shape, or form. So, okay, we're good. We're still on that positive track. But otherwise, you shouldn't really be discussing them. Mostly, whatever they're doing is none of your business. And if you don't like them, just stay away from them. Your sense of self of peace, right? Your internal sense of peace is worth more money than anything else. And there is no dollar amount you can attach to that. It's just being in that sense of place and balance. You're going to bring in those things that you want. You're calling them into you from the universe. You bring in positivity with positivity. Like attracts like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you, Aimee. I mean, if you're going to spread something, spread the positivity. And anything that's not part of that, either keep to yourself or just don't acknowledge it or don't talk, whatever it takes to make that happen.
Don't tell those people secrets either. All right. Because if they're coming to you telling you other people's secrets, whatever secrets you tell them, they're going to go tell someone else.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you can see their track record too, and if people do, in the community I'm in, a lot of people are doing podcasts and stuff like this. It's like, well, let's look at your track record. Let's see how many people have a beef with you. What is the reason for that? Is it justified or not? And then I'm going to make my decisions based on what I see. And also the other thing too, Aimee, this is really basic, but I send someone a message. If we're going to have a relationship in any way, I expect that person to get back to me. If say 48 hours goes by, you can at least be like, just hang on, Dave, I'll be right back with you. I just like one sentence. Anyone can do that. You can do that while you're walking into your car to start your car in the morning or something. I'm not talking about a paragraph, but just keep people posted, just keep them in the loop. And then when I don't see that happening, I don't pursue the conversation because they don't value me, obviously. They probably don't even value themselves, which is a totally different issue. It's a self-worth issue. They have to heal themselves,
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, common human decency seems to be an issue for a certain, well, unfortunately, a large number of people in the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of the other issues, it's not the topic really for today, but it's what's in our food supply, what's in our medical devices, what's in the shots that are administered to us, stuff like this. I've always believed in 100% natural methods up until the last minute. So I'm not going to any of that stuff. If I'm going to do something, actually, I don't even really use herbs, but I definitely support natural herbs and remedies, stuff like that. But go to your forest and go to your herbalist and go to like a Chinese medicine or Ayurveda.
Wait, hold on, dude. Do not just go pick things in your forest until you get some education.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't do that. You don't know what that is.
No,
Make sure you know what you're doing before you consume something.
Okay. Your local environment, though, your forests I believe have everything you need in it. I've even watched the Paiute tribe in northern Nevada, and I saw a documentary on them when I was up there this past summer, and they made it clear. They're like, we live in a fairly like stark landscape. There's not a lot of stuff growing here. And this is what the woman said to me. She goes, as long as you know what to pick, it's all there for us to use and to help and how to prepare it and stuff like that. So yes, of course you have to have the training. But the medicines, for me, it's all available to us, in the land. And if people,
it is. The evolution of the pharmaceutical industry has its start in the herbology of old, and it's like that's not even a maybe. That's for sure. Okay, so on my mother's side of the family, her maiden name is Letterly. And yes, indeed, that's like a weird, some common number, great uncle, Letterly Laboratories. That the story of those brothers who came across from Germany in the first place. One was a soldier, one was a butcher. That's the one I'm a descendant from. And one was indeed, he was like the hunter trapper. So he would like go kill the things to bring to the butcher to sell in the shop in the first place. And, he also was an herbologist person because he was a woodsman. He spent all his time out there. Those, that guy and his descendants from those things that he learned from those natural medicines. That's where Letterly Laboratories even started blossoming from. It's from that family. They're no longer involved in that organization at all. They sold that many, many years ago, but they ran it for a good while there. So yeah, absolutely. Everything we know about modern pharmaceuticals comes from the ancient world. In the herbology, it's in there. In fact, it's one of the things that's in one of those broadcasts on my podcast. I can't remember which one, where I go over the medicine that is in trees. I think it's in with the Celtic shamanistic book that I was reviewing, where it literally, I have this list of every one of these different trees that are in any number of environments and exactly what those trees, if they have a medicinal purpose, what they do. So there's lots of resources out there. Yeah. A lot of the ancient medicines coming from, the environments and trees being in and of itself. And that's part of how trees became sacred to humanity in the first place. It was one of the first things that we figured out contained medicine. Because some all natural antibiotics come from there. There's things absolutely they use for packing of wounds. There's stuff that's good, for killing any number of things. You can survive during the winter time at least as far as keeping some kind of sustenance in your body. I wouldn't say you should survive the whole winter that way, but on some of the medicines that are in trees, like on some of
for sure,
tree root medicine kind of things. So it's there. You just have to bother to go study.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went to I was in Massachusetts one time, and I think it was the Berkshires. Yeah, it must have been around there somewhere. It was a little further east, but anyway, it was away from all the cities, and there's a fairly strong tradition of herbalism in New England, really, and even with all of the say the witch and the Wicca traditions and everything through that area. I don't you don't have to associate it with that. If people, it's always all up to you. It's whatever you want to do,
right?
And not, of course, there's white magic, black magic, everything in between. Like, people define things differently. But for me, it's available out in the forest because obviously whoever created this earth, call it God if you'd like to, wanted for that to be there. Otherwise, it would not be there. So that we need to question why it's there and also what we can use it for. It's not just going to be there for no reason, in my belief. But anyway, I went into this herbalist store. Right. I don't know if you would call it like an apothecary or something. It's like one of the really old traditions. They had I'm sure you've seen these, Aimee, but they had a spread of must have been 200 dried herbs, and they were all in the glass jars, and they had the measurement, in plastic bags so you can pack it there.
Any of them there? Like, if you wanted them to make a tincture, they would make you something?
Probably. Yeah, probably. I didn't actually ask.
If they do that, then they're apothecary. I mean, that's just what that is.
Okay.
Otherwise, that is also the name for the cabinet itself in which they normally store the herbs in.
Okay, excellent. Yep. So anyway, I was just looking through all the names, and I opened probably 20 of them so I could smell the flowers and all the dried flowers and dried leaves and everything. And I was just thinking, I could make literally years of research with this and just brew a tea or something, or read about how to prepare them correctly and just see. And that's the thing. What I've done throughout the years is just see how you feel. You want to make sure you have the indications correct. You want to make sure you're being safe. But what I'm saying is that if someone says that this root or this such and such a root is helpful for rheumatoid or something like that, well, try it and see. Your knuckles feel better, your hands move better, you feel like you have more limberness in your limbs and all this. And if you don't, then hey, go to the next one and try that one and see what works. Yeah, again, according to the indications about how much and what and for what malady and stuff, but. Just the more open you are in terms of all these traditions and what's available to you, you can just come out with, you just have to let it flow, let it happen.
Well, you really kind of need balance between the two. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. What are you treating? Right? I mean, yeah, I like all natural methods, and I go there first.
Mm-hmm.
I have several different things. Like I have a particular tree, a tea I drink at night, because I want to make sure I sleep peacefully in a particular way, and that's better than going on a sleep aid. It's an all natural source that allows me to do that. It's made by traditional medicines. Right. And those are beautiful teas. I highly recommend those. If you have any one of those things, those teas do beautiful. But they're going to treat your symptoms. Right. Now, some of those all natural medicines are all natural antibiotics, and they will treat more serious things. So it's certainly a path one can go. So it's a matter of a mix of the two for me personally. Like if I need an antibiotic, I'm going to the doctor and I'm going to get an antibiotic. But while I'm taking that antibiotic, I'm also going to take some other all natural stuff to help try to balance out that gut health, because it is going to affect the gut. So you got to take your probiotics. Yeah. You got to try to balance out the extreme effects that Western medicine gives. And a lot of the natural herbal remedies and things that I take at this point in my life are exactly that, because I have a regular medicine I have to take because I have the rheumatoid arthritis that I have. And it's a genetic problem. It's a gene problem. It's not, just aches and pains or something like that. It's more than that. So it has to be treated so that it doesn't have long-term effects on me.
Yeah.
But it does come with some very hefty side effects. And with those hefty side effects, I balance that out by having the all natural, herbs and vitamins and things of this nature. If I can take it from an all natural source from my body, it's gonna, it's going to bring it back into balance. It's all about balance. It's all about healing, and it's all about balance, because the healing brings you to balance.
And that's, of course, given there's no counterindications to the Western medicine, in terms of what you can't take. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, of course, always consult the doctor for sure. I mean, but there's just so many things that if they give you a green light and they said, yeah, it's not going to be an issue, you can try it, then give it a shot for sure. All right. So
most of my doctors are pretty open to that kind of stuff too. They're open to both. Yeah. They want you to keep them informed so they can watch for the counterindications so they know what you're on. But they're like, if you want to try it, do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wonder if that has something to do with the community you live in too, Aimee, because some areas are probably much more less likely to go into that.
Yeah, I'm out here in Tucson, Arizona. For anybody who doesn't know, it is the weirdest group of conservative hippies you will ever meet in your entire life.
Yeah, really cool.
Everything is co-op. Everybody wants solar panels. Let's put on composters. It's not a problem. Let's harvest that rainwater. That makes sense. All that for sure. And then once you start getting into politics, which I don't really want to get into, then we start to see clashes of titans happening.
Yeah.
But even the people who would be traditionally considered, in the voting categories, conservative, it doesn't matter. They're still doing this grassroots green movement, better for the environment, open to homeopathic medicines and all that kind of stuff. It's still that kind of, the society here just sort of balances that way. And I think it's because the native peoples that were here initially, the Tohono O'odham, they're still here. There's still communications going back and forth. It's normal. That's it's just part of the culture. It's not unusual when you're walking down the street, to see this mix happening here between, high Mexican population with a high. So there's already cross-cultural stuff clashing all over the place here.
That term for that particular tribe, it sounds like Pacific Islander to me. And what's interesting about that, do you have something to add about that?
I can't say where the Tohono O'odham came from. I don't know what their root tribe is.
It sounds like Polynesian almost to me. What's interesting about that is that there's a huge amount of evidence for a very, very, very early contact with the west coast of North America, well, North and South America actually, with Asian cultures. And it's in their language, it's in the names, it's in the motifs and the symbolism and the statues and all this stuff. I mean, there's a group of natives, I believe, in Peru, and they're called the Chan Chan. You cannot tell me.
It's cross connection.
Yeah, it's like that's a very obvious one. But when I see it, and it's interesting too, Amy, because if you go to the Atlantic side, you see kind of the opposite. You see the direct influence from West Africa and Western Europe and everything. And the
Mhm.
question then becomes: is when were these ideas really distributed? When did that happen? Was it pre-glacial period, post-glacial period? Did they use ships? Did they use? I mean, I don't know. Did they walk on the ice? Did they use planes? Did they use portals?
Well,
It's
I
all
mean,
kinds of things.
this particular culture right here, I mean, guaranteed they were running into the Spanish because this was happening at the same time that the Spanish were taking over Mexico. So at the same time that would have been encountering the Aztecs and of this kind of stuff that we're very well known
Definitely.
in American, you learn American history. Uh, you so with this tribe. It's this tribe was in this particular valley that we're in. This valley that we're in is pretty unique in and of itself. There are absolutely people that will tell stories about vortexes happening here. They talk about skinwalkers. Like there's cultures in which, because there's Navajo here as well, so you will get all of those same traditions of some of the things that show up on those other shows that people like to watch, like the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. That same culture, so same traditions and stuff. It wouldn't surprise
Definitely.
me if there was overlap going on. I know there was overlap over. You start getting over on the East Coast, and I know there's overlap, like the Algonquin tribes and how they spread out and their exposure to the early Europeans, let alone the people that came over, later on, where when the nation forming really kind of started for out this way. And Algonquin tribes, basically, they had the whole, and a lot of our system, our judicial system, it runs very much in parallel to how the Algonquin tribe system worked, and they were just basically almost coast to coast.
That the Iroquois, are they part of that, Amy?
I don't think the Iroquois are Algonquin, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Because I know some of the systems that they had were developed by the founding fathers or something, or was borrowed, because it was a good democratic system or something of that nature. Yeah, very interesting.
No, the Iroquois were actually opposed to the Algonquins.
Okay.
The Algonquin peoples, this is when we start talking about. Do you believe the Cherokee are Algonquin? I think the Cheyenne are as well. So, the Algonquins are a particular tribe, but they're also a root tribe to other tribes.
Okay, right. Like a broader
Mm-hmm.
kind of parent tribe or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
the
really
Algonquin.
a language and a culture with the legal system and stuff like that, and then they start veering off in those
Definitely. Yeah, they had a fairly, if I'm not mistaken, the Algonquins had a fairly large area extending quite far down into the United States, current day United States.
Oh yeah, they're in Canada, but they also go all the way over to into the Midwest.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do believe even and northern, sticking basically to the more northern areas, although that coastline also heavy into that. But going all the way over towards the Seattle area up north there. So yeah,
Definitely.
you are going to find things like the First Nations people, like what the tribes that they're talking about on Oak Island. That yes, those are Algonquin root tribes. Same thing, because they're all up in that area.
Great. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, we've got I guess about 20 minutes, Amy. A little bit less than 20 minutes.
All right.
If you want to talk about maybe some of the Rosicrucian Freemason beliefs, I'd like to cover a couple of them in terms of what kind of, where are they pulling their wisdom from? What are they trying to teach? We did talk about the alchemy component, but I'd like to develop it a little bit more. Whatever you can share about that.
Okay, so in the Rosicrucian manual, if you start going through that, you will indeed find, and this is the thing, and I wish I could find this, because this is Amarok for pretty specific, right? I wish I could find this book, but they talk about this, where if they started teaching the Rosicrucianism via mail order correspondence, like classes via mail order correspondence that you would write back and forth with.
Were they doing that in Europe as well, or just over here?
I don't know if they were doing it anywhere else, because this is the Amaret claims to have ties back to Europe. That's what they say makes them a valid Rosicrucian, group here, is because they met with the imperator back in England and they got approved as an actual charter.
Okay. Yep.
So, but it's a matter of whether or not you believe that imperator back there was really the authority. Like, is that their pope, or isn't he their pope? Because it's essentially what that guy is their pope. Just like the Grand Maester is basically the pope for the Masons. Okay. They've got one person that's in charge of everything, which does not lean itself to a democratic system. It does not lean itself to equality for all. Right. They're not really teaching equality for all. It's a secondary class system. Look at what they even do with their rankings. They have their grades, which are almost identical in the Rosicrucians, the Masons, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is really basically what they're all teaching, is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Now, you do tend to have some in the Rosicrucian eras, certain eras, especially in the Age of Enlightenment, you do tend to have some fist fights going on there about that. I mean, Kepler versus Flood, they didn't like each other. They had different premises on astronomy. But what they're really teaching is alchemy. If you were to go look in that book, you will find the alchemical tenets. So you have some of the plates that are in there, like that they would have made these things from. And they're trying to teach biology. They're teaching science. Some of their biology is correct. Some of their biology is wrong. They go into a great deal about the spinal column and the spinal cord in and of itself. They talk about the like how molecules work. I mean, they're really getting into the science of it. And that is because you will find that tenets as you go back into alchemy, when you're getting to the higher levels of alchemy, when they start talking about the as above, so below concepts, that's really what they're starting to get into. If you really want to understand what's going on above, you must first understand what's going on here. And you must understand it on a molecular level. You must understand it on a quantum energy movement level, because all of it is about energy movement.
Is this primarily the Rosicrucians doing this, or also the Freemasons in your experience?
You're gonna find it in both. It's because it's alchemy. The tenets are alchemy. And then alchemy, you find, bleeds over into Druidic traditions. It bleeds over into Wiccans. It's going to bleed over into all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all related. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the ideas have spread profusely throughout the world. Mm-hmm. What have they said specifically about the spinal cord, if you remember, or if you can share it?
Well, I don't have a problem sharing it. I'm not a Rosicrucian. What they're saying about the spinal column is that they're making that allegory to the spinal column being the tree of life, and the pineal gland being the pine cone, and the channels of energy. It's a lot about harnessing your own energy and what you need to do, in their opinion, in order to harness your own energy. Like it's a way of centering yourself, but it's first trying to teach you about the biology of you, so you can put you in balance first. Now, in the teachings of what they're going through, they do go through, you do have to have your lessons plans turned into somebody who has to approve whether or not you've actually done the work, whether or not your work is correct, kind of thing. And then you could do a certain grade in which your classes are then delivered psychically, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, because I'm like, how would I know? If I were a student in this correspondence class, how would I know? Because for me, I have to send you the paper so you can grade it. That's not like any spiritual class I've ever taken for anything ever. To me, that's the corruptibility of that spiritual class in the first place. Because any good spiritual teacher will tell you that your path is not going to be the same as mine. I can only guide you. It's not my job to give you all the answers. It's my job to get you to ask the right question, so you go find your own answer, because it's your path and not mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, just trust me, I'll just beam the teaching over to you, and yeah, it's the correct one. Don't cross-check it with anyone else. You know, you have serious problems if that's your premise.
Right?
Yeah, but it's interesting because really what I do, of course, I teach ascension. Most of what I teach are ascension teachings. I know there's obviously a lot of astrology in alchemical teachings, and they use the symbology a lot for the planets and what they represent. There's a lot of talk about dualism and how you have the opposing opposites for balance and all these things. But it's just, and again, this I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but what's just absurd to me is that if anyone mentions alchemy, I point them immediately to the Ayurvedic texts out of ancient India. There's no bullshit. They're talking science. They're talking fasting. They're talking about working with your fluids to refine your fluids. That's the real alchemy right there. So if people, and it's thousands, we don't even know how old the tradition is. It far precedes the written texts. Obviously, people were teaching and talking about it. But I guarantee you, and I will hang my hat on this for the rest of the time I'm on this planet. If you really want to understand ascension teachings, you have to get into fasting. You have to stop eating the quantity of what people are eating. Some people say, oh, it's okay, I'll just be vegan. Well, you know what? If you do that, you're going to end up with a lot of alkalinity in your body, and it's going to upset your balance of in terms of your metabolic rate and what you can pull from energy sources versus stripping out the excess. Vegetables do a lot of that. So I have to say it all the time. Like, no, it's actually no food. You have to stop. You have to stop eating, and then you have to make sure at the same time you have to make sure that your fluids are circulating. Because if you stop eating and your fluids are not moving, it can cause serious problems and disease. It can even be dangerous. But when people are talking about these, and I'm not saying they're obscure. I mean, a lot of them are actually correct in terms of how the alchemy is taught. But and like you mentioned before, it's what are we doing with that teaching? And if your idea is that, oh, I'm going to understand how to harness my power and I'm going to use it for bad things, no, come on. And you think that's divinity. Okay, well, I guarantee, from my perspective, I guarantee people that there are actual divine figures that are a lot more powerful than any human being down here. I guarantee that from my perspective.
Yes.
So if you think you can trick them, nah, man, no, your time's going to be up.
That doesn't even work. We're all just pieces of the divine. You can't be greater than the sum. Like the parts, you're a part. Even if you put together all the parts, even if you could possess the energy of every living thing here, or even things that aren't living, because absolutely everything, every object that's around me is energy, because we're all just energy, because everything can be burned. Some things are fuel efficient, some are not. So we're not necessarily efficient energy, but we're energy, right? Even if you could bring all of that all together, you still couldn't be greater than, the creator, than divine source, because he made all of that and they're all pieces of that. So you can't absorb him. You're not going to be greater than him. So it's impossible. Like, and most of these societies, though, are all set up with this authoritarian aspect. So if you're talking about on an energy exchange level, it's not even what you're doing that is generating your power source for you. You're elevating yourself for them, so they can pull on your power. It's a pyramid scheme. It's a giant power pyramid scheme.
Yeah,
they understand the real teachings. As they get up in the things, you're getting exposed to more knowledge as you're going. So as you line up and you go up there higher in that thing, you're basically loaning your energy to someone else.
Yeah, and it's just, I agree with you. It's this thing where no one seems to be able to produce enough of their own vital energy or their life frequency or their chi or however you want to say it. And so then inevitably what happens, just like you said, Amy, is that you end up, God forbid, stealing it. A lot of people do that, or, borrowing it from someone else. But the real teachings is that in terms of freedom and freedom of energies, you have to produce your own energy in your own body. And the way I talk about it is actually you need to create a fusion reaction in your body, which is a closed circuit loop that doesn't lose any energy. It's constantly circulating. And you'd be amazed what happens if you can establish. It's exceedingly hard to do that, but if you can establish that, you'd be amazed at how much power you have, and you won't even be eating because you don't need it, because you've already established the circuit. and it's constant energy loop. It's moving back and forth. So until people can do that, we're always going to be trying to take energy from other people, and to mess with the balance of that.
We're taking energy from the things we consume. I mean, that's literally why we consume food in the first place, is to take the energy from it. We're transmuting energy just by eating, as is every other creature on Earth, right? I mean, that's the nature here. Even the plant life that exists is transmuting energy. I mean, the trees take in, right, carbon dioxide, and they go through and spit out oxygen.
That's right, yeah.
So that's just a transmutation in and of itself. Because it's all about transition. It's all about transmutation. It's all about energy transference, and it's all about being in balance. That's why I tell you people to stay away from those narcissistic people. When they're trying to get you all wound up, it's so they can steal your energy. If you don't wind up, they can't take nothing. It's a void of course moon kind of attitude. I like to.
Oh yeah. And you know what? For me, it's actually very simple, because whichever frequency that you're resonating with, and we're talking about divine frequencies here. So basically, this is what I believe, and I have a lot to support it, is that if you're not in concert with that higher level vibration, if you don't match that, then you don't have actual access to that. So you can lie to yourself for your whole life if you want to, and try to, manipulate people for energy, or try to steal some people's energy and stuff. Well, guess what? The universe knows who you are. You can't fool it. And when this is what I believe, is that when you pass or when you die, your energy signature, it sticks with your body, whether it's in a physical form or not, your spirit form of your body. And you will not have, if you think, oh, I did a great job and I learned all the high teachings, and then you get up in front of the divine figure and said, yeah, what'd you do with it? And then that divine figure shows you a movie of your life taking advantage of people and, working in secrecy and stuff like that. It's going to laugh at you. They're going to laugh at you. It's pathetic showing. So you have to actually live, the person has to live what you preach. And again, I expect to see people out there in service to other people, full disclosure, be open with your information, be open that you're there to help. That's how we get to a better place. We need a lot more people to believe that and start acting that way.
Yeah, well, we do. There's a tenet that my work has that we'd like to use. And that is, and I very much like the person who used to be the president of the company of this, who is a friend of mine, came up with this as like our internal slogan kind of thing to motivate us. We're an ESOP, so we're all employee owned. And that is, my success comes from helping others to be successful. Servant leadership really is what it's all about. You're supposed to serve humanity. Anytime you're in any organization and a leader starts telling you what you owe them and never tells you what they owe you, you're in the wrong place, and it's time to get out.
That's right, yeah.
Balance. Don't stay there.
Yeah, and all it's going to take is for enough people to enact that, in their company or their workplace or whatever, and then we will, by default, have a better country and a better world. Because it's a cliche, but you have to be the change that you want to see in the world, obviously. So if no one else is doing it, you can still do it. You can be the person, even if it's just you doing it. That's okay. I'm the way when I do my podcast and things, and when I'm on other shows and everything, I do it the way that I want to do it. That feels correct to me, and I'm not going to bend with that. I'm not going to be on a show and someone's going to be like, Dave, if you say this, we'll give you like $100. No, man, never. And if that means I have to live on the side of the street, fine. And then when I cross over and I get to a better place, my actions have been recorded as correct actions and moral actions. And I personally believe in reincarnation. I believe in transmigration of the soul and everything. And so it's all recorded. It's all recorded. To go back to Egypt at the divine feather, weighing your heart against the Ma'at feather. Well, that's what I believe it is. Is that when you get off here, you come before a council. They show you what you did. You see where you stand on it. You have to answer for your actions. And if they've been light and they've been in truth and kindness and generosity and all these things, you get to move on. You get to probably move on somewhere better, with more responsibility, stuff like that.
Well, all depends on your belief system. Now, I know that there's a particular belief system that says you go through a certain number of life cycles. Now, it's as many life cycles as it takes for you to learn all your life lessons, and it's just a matter of repeating. But once you make yourself, with numerology, once you make yourself back up to life path number 9, if you've learned all your lessons at life path number 9, there is no life path number 10. You either are coming back around for another cycle, or you have angel wings, your guardian angel wings, because that is the lowest hierarchy of the angels that one can be in, and that would be your ascension. So you still end up coming back here, but now you come back here to watch other people and try to stop them from doing stupid things. So I don't know if that's better.
In a higher gradient body as well, something that's not flesh and bone.
In a light body.
I would be completely okay with being at the lowest form of a light body, just to get out of the density, this earth density. To me, it's miserable, but some people don't mind. But it's interesting too, because the number 10, in fact, pretty much all the traditions have taught it that what you just kind of stated exactly is that a lot of them have the 9. They focus on the 9, and the 10 is like, essentially, it's like you're free. It's not like a step to do something. It's that 9 is the final step of work. Once you're past 9, then you're free. You can call it 10 if you want, but it's nothing to do there.
No, there's no, like, in numerology, there is no 10. Everything is 1 through 9, right? So everything breaks down into those base numbers.
Oh, that's a good point too, Aimee. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. They take it back down to the base numbers, because you either made it where you're through life path 9, or you're starting over again. Now, there's nothing saying that within that reincarnation that until you reach that life that you had the hang up where you couldn't pass the lesson, right? Like whatever number that was for you, if that was whatever lessons you're learning in life path 5, you want life path when you've reincarnated 1 through 4 might be cakewalk for you, because you already know those lessons. So when you're presented with those challenges, you just pass everything with flying colors and you have an easy life, until you start getting into those other life paths. And that's the tricky thing there. And that's pretty much how they trick you up, because life path number 9 is the hardest life path. That is when you are in that direct martyrdom kind of thing. People are going to pile crap on you. They are. And the people, no matter what life path you're on, people are going to hide. You can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond.
Yeah.
Don't react. Reaction is instantaneous. It's great if you're slamming on those car brakes, catching babies, before they hit the ground. Then react. Otherwise, respond.
Yeah, I agree.
Think before you speak.
Yeah, that's very, very good, Aimee. I appreciate that insight. I like that a lot. Is that it's a response, not necessarily a reaction. Be in control of your response and do it from a point of morality. Do the correct thing, and you'll be okay. You get where you're going. Okay. Do you have somewhere where people can contact you, Aimee, if they want to do that?
Yeah, you can totally find me on Facebook. Adventures in Pixieland is on Facebook. I also, you can find me just by my name there on Instagram or Twitter. Also, I do have the YouTube channel, and if you go into any of my videos on my YouTube channel, I will list out an email address there for contact for any emails that anybody might want to reach me for. So I can be reached at it's pixie050678@gmail.com.
Excellent, great, thank you. And then you also have your Facebook profile under your name.
I do have a Facebook profile under my name as well. Yeah. Although I do believe that one is under actually under Tailson22, not my first name.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, Aimee. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I mean, just a wonderful conversation. We covered a lot of topics. I'd love to continue in the future as well with expanding some of the ideas, and obviously if you got new information coming up, I would welcome you back to share that.
Excellent.
Thank you guys for being here, and we will see you next time. There will always be a great guest on the show here. And again, Aimee, I really thank you. I had a great time, and you're a brilliant person, and I really appreciate your perspective.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.